sur Zoom, ainsi que sur www.pressclub.ch, où vous pouvez suivre en direct cette conférence de presse. Une conférence de presse qui porte aujourd'hui sur la population Amhara en Éthiopie, qui présente aujourd'hui la situation par le biais d'une association fondée à Genève l'année dernière qui s'appelle Stop Amhara Genocide et qui va tenir cette conférence de presse aujourd'hui avec des intervenants ici à Genève, dans cette salle, au domaine de Pente, mais également des intervenants qui parleront en Afrique, aux États-Unis et ailleurs encore en Europe. Donc, bienvenue à toutes et à tous, et je passe directement la parole à Madame Yodith Gideon, Madame Yodith Gideon, qui est la fondatrice et la directrice de l'association Stop Amhara Genocide. Madame Gideon, je vous passe la parole. Parlez dans le micro. Je crois qu'il a lu.
Merci. Merci à tout le monde qui est là pour nous écouter. Aujourd'hui, je vais essayer d'expliquer un peu ce qui se passe, ce qui n'est pas, en fait, qu'on ne trouve pas dans les médias aujourd'hui. Donc, je vais commencer directement. Donc, les Amharas, on va parler des Amharas. Les Amharas, c'est une ethnie de plus de 40 millions de personnes en Éthiopie, sont systématiquement persécutés et massacrés depuis plus de 30 ans. Au cours de ces 3 dernières années, cela a pris une ampleur incontrôlable et la situation est devenue extrêmement préoccupante. Malgré le constat déplorable, les médias et les gouvernements internationaux font mine d'ignorer ces exactions et refusent de publier ces informations. La situation, le génocide de ce peuple s'opère pas seulement dans la zone de guerre, mais aussi dans différentes régions du pays censées avoir été épargnées par la guerre. Ce fait demande une clarification. Le premier front dont tout le monde parle est la guerre au Tigray. Vous pouvez remarquer, je n'ai pas dit la guerre au Tigray, parce que Tigray, c'est le peuple, la guerre au Tigray dans les régions de Tigray. Cependant, nous devons considérer ce fait comme l'arbre qui cache la forêt. La plupart des gens ne connaissent pas l'entière de la vérité. Depuis sa prise de pouvoir il y a 3 ans, le gouvernement oromo, dirigé par le premier ministre Abiy Ahmed, lui-même né d'origine et de la région d'Oromia, a entendu sa mainmise sur le pays tout entier. Ainsi, depuis 10 mois, il mène une guerre contre l'ancien régime TPLF, Tigray People Liberation Front, qui était au pouvoir depuis 27 ans. Le conflit a commencé lorsque TPLF a attaqué les forces de défense au nord dans leur camp avec le concours de soldats d'origine tigréenne. Dans ce conflit, le gouvernement a retiré ses troupes plusieurs fois en disant qu'il s'agit d'une stratégie militaire. En parallèle, le gouvernement a envoyé les paysans d'Amhara s'enrôler, soi-disant pour défendre le pays, en leur apportant aucune assistance logistique. Les paysans Amhara envoyés sur le front ont fait appel plusieurs fois qu'on leur fournisse suffisamment d'armes et de munitions au lieu d'une arme pour 2 et 40 balles par arme pour affronter les TPLF lourdement armés. De cette façon, l'administration d'Abiy Ahmed prépare la mort certaine des hommes de ce groupe ethnique. Il est important de préciser une fois encore, les paysans Amhara sont armés de leurs propres armes et ont vendu leurs biens pour se fournir de munitions. De plus, lors cette milice Amhara emporte une victoire, Le gouvernement envoie les forces d'armée éthiopiennes et ordonne les Amharas de se retirer. Par la suite, le gouvernement laisse libre passage au groupe terroriste de TPLF. Rien que la semaine passée, un drone de gouvernement a tué plus que 30 soldats de milice Amhara qui étaient postés dans la région d'Ataye et qui protégeaient le peuple de l'invasion de TPLF. Cette milice entre le marteau et l'enclume, et le gouvernement censé de les soutenir leur enfiche de coups dans le dos. J'aimerais aussi attirer votre attention sur le demi-million de soldats de la région Oromia qui n'ont pas participé à cette guerre. Seuls les soldats et les paysans des régions Amhara et d'Afar ont été envoyés combattre le TPLF. D'autre part, quand TPLF contrôle une région, les soldats exécutent les civils, violent les femmes et détruisent toutes les infrastructures sur leur chemin, comme ça s'est passé à Maïkadra, à Ujale, à Gamsa, au Kombolcha, Mersa, Kopo, Tchana et Woldia. Le deuxième front est situé dans les régions de Metakel et dans le Bénichangul-Gumuz où on le voit des tueries de masse du peuple d'Amhara. Il y a une dizaine d'années, le gouvernement a lancé la construction d'un grand barrage pour produire l'électricité sur le Nil. Depuis que l'administration d'Abiy Ahmed est au pouvoir, il a décidé de chasser les Amharas vivant dans les environs du barrage en brûlant leurs villages, en massacrant d'une manière systématique. Le but étant d'installer les membres de groupes ethniques au pouvoir, les Oromos. Un audio enregistré pendant une réunion, M. Shimelis Abdissa, président de la région Oromia, constitue une preuve incontestable de ce qui se passe dans les régions de Metakel. Il disait aux élites Oromo, « Nous sommes en train de réussir notre stratégie dans le Bénichangul-Gumuz. Nous sommes parvenus à 40%. Bientôt, nous serons plus que 50% et nous contrôlons la région. » Il y a peu, des habitants de plusieurs villages Amhara dans le Bénichangul-Gumuz ont été massacrés avec des flèches et avec des balles. Plus de 240 000 personnes ont été forcées à fuir ces tueries. Cette population se trouve éparpillée dans le pays sans aucune aide, ni de la part du gouvernement actuel, ni d'organisations internationales. Ces attaques ont eu lieu la nuit pendant le sommeil. Hommes, femmes et enfants sont quotidiennement mutilés et assassinés sans que la communauté internationale ne réagisse. Les meurtres répétés ne sont plus suffisants pour mettre à la presse d'augmenter ses tirages. Tout détourne simplement les yeux. Le troisième front concerne plusieurs incidents qui ont été déroulés dans les régions d'Oromia où les Amharas ont été prises pour cible et mutilés à mort à l'aide des machettes. Les incidents se sont multipliés dans les régions d'Harar, Bale, Arsi, Wellega, Legatafo, Bourayou, qui sont des exemples majeurs de nettoyage ethnique de masse qui sont en cours et de ces crimes contre l'humanité. Nous avons vu voisins de longue date massacrer leurs voisins en les traitant de neftanya, terme péjoratif désignant les Amharas. La cruauté dont font preuve les Oromos est indescriptible. Les enfants sont endoctrinés de leur plus jeune âge à travers des chants matinaux qui contribuent à créer une haine viscérale contre les Amharas. Toute une génération destinée à se transformer en arme létale. Aujourd'hui, plus que 40 000 Amharas sont pris en otage dans les régions de Wellega. Ils lancent des appels à l'aide pour que le gouvernement les aide à fuir la région. Les agresseurs ont bloqué tout accès, aucune route humanitaire n'est accordée aux femmes ou aux enfants. La famille de ce pauvre Jean ont contacté l'association Stop Amhara Génocide et nous ont apporté leurs tristes témoignages. Leur message est clair. Ce sont les autorités locales qui sont en train de mener ces atrocités. Ils ont reçu des menaces de la part des officiels, de messages glaçants pour leur dire « ce n'est plus votre terre, vous allez tous pourrir ». Les hommes qui ont essayé de se défendre ont été arrêtés et emprisonnés par les autorités locales, c'est-à-dire l'administration d'Abiy Ahmed. Nous avons reçu également de nombreux témoignages monstrueux. Les femmes enceintes dont le ventre ont été ouverts à vif pour qu'elles ne donnent pas naissance à un enfant Amhara en Oromia. Au moment que je vous adresse ces paroles, à ce moment même-là, des milliers d'Amhara attendent cachés dans le bois de Wellega, avec les enfants parmi eux, attendant d'être secourus et de leurs assassins. Le monde doit cesser de détourner les regards et la presse ne peut plus rester silencieuse. L'histoire de la mémoire, elle retiendra la lâcheté et l'indifférence. Un génocide est en cours, plus personne ne doit l'ignorer. La pression doit être mise sur le gouvernement pour que cela cesse immédiatement. Merci. Je vais donner la parole maintenant à Monsieur Dawit Weldegiorgis. I will give now the chance to speak to Dawit Weldegiorgis. So it's, is he there? Yeah, okay.
Excusez-moi, je ne parle pas français bien. Je parle anglais seulement, unfortunately. So I will speak in English. I have been given 10 minutes. It might be a little bit more than 10 minutes. I will try not to repeat what Madame Yodith has said, but I will focus more entirely on the genocide. As you know, there are many things happening in Ethiopia. It's so difficult even to catch up with what's going on in Ethiopia. So it's difficult to focus on the genocide alone without considering the context of the ongoing war and the ongoing genocide and crimes against humanity. So I will try as much as possible to focus on the genocide and the law because I'm working for a volunteer worker for an organization, an Ethiopian organization, organized to bring the perpetrators of these crimes committed in Ethiopia to international justice. Therefore, we have an enormous amount of information and data and knowledge about what's going on in Ethiopia. So I therefore try to prepare a text, not because I don't know the subject well for the sake of brevity. I would rather read what I have prepared. So just bear with me for a few minutes. Though the ongoing war in Ethiopia is supposed to be between the TPLF, as Madame Yodith has stated, and the government forces, at this moment, the government is making it look like it is a war between the Amharas and the TPLF. Sadly, the Amharas are dying again and again, being displaced. Paradoxically, the Oromo Special Forces, which compete the side with the National Defense Forces, do not seem to be actively engaged in this war. According to the Prime Minister, the war is about destroying what he calls the junta in the Tigray region. If this is the case, why are the Amharas disproportionately mobilized to fight this war? Amharas believed that this was a call from the motherland, and as they have done throughout history for centuries, they heeded to the call of their leaders and went to the front line. While the federal forces were either retreating, leaving heavy weapons and tanks to the enemies, the Amhara, though ill-equipped and poorly organized, fought hard and did their share with enormous sacrifices. Without the support of the government and with federal troops retreating under orders, they fought hard and strong and put the force of the TPLF at bay for some time. For the Prime Minister, his Oromo troops, Amharas, were used as cannon fodders, one form of genocide. It was done intentionally, and thousands of surviving troops can testify to this ultimate truth, that they were betrayed and left on their own to confront an enemy armed to the teeth, partly by the weapons which the federal forces intentionally left behind to the advancing TPLF troops. This, we believe, is one form of genocide to eliminate the Amharas. Though millions of the followers of Abiy make it look like he is fighting this war to unite Ethiopia and bring back peace, harmony, and equality, not once has the Prime Minister stated that this was his intention. He has never stated that he will remove ethnic federalism enshrined in the Constitution, remove any form of ethnic hegemony, and bring to justice those who have looted, killed, and grabbed Amhara lands and displaced millions. Neither had he ever expressed any empathy for the thousands of victims of genocide and crimes against humanity that have been and being committed in Metekel, Walaga, Arsi, Shashamene, Benshangul, Bale, and in many Oromo occupied lands. He went to Metekel once and talked to the people, and as soon as he left, over 300, mostly Amharas, were slaughtered. It seemed that he gave instructions for the genocide to continue rather than calming the situation. All reasonable analysis leads to the conclusion that the Prime Minister is either leading the genocide and crimes against humanity directed against the Amharas, or he has given a tacit agreement to the implementation of this ideology of extermination, since he grew up in the ranks of the OPDO, a cover name for the OLF, at the age of 15, and was the head of the intelligence agency for 27 years. Prime Minister Abiy has mobilized the ragtag Amhara militia and special forces, ill-equipped, lacking support from the central government, to the front line to fight his war. Amharas were known as furious fighters and believers of a united Ethiopia. Unlike the OLF and the TPLF, they were never allowed to organize themselves and protect themselves, their lands, and their rights to control the onslaught of the TPLF forces, which have been amassing weapons and resources for the last 30 years, not allowing Amharas to be trained and be equipped over the years, and in these final hours, use their strong sense of patriotism for the integrity of the nation to make them cannon fodders is another form of genocide made intentionally by the Prime Minister and the government. When we say genocide, we know what we are talking about. We mean genocide as defined both by the Geneva Convention and the domestic law, the criminal law of Ethiopia. Since Prime Minister Abiy took power, these criminal acts have been more intensified and pronounced, targeting the Amharas and those associated with Amharas. Today, Amharas and Christians, seen for centuries as the lighthouse of freedom, peace, and tolerance, are being persecuted in this land, biblical land. The activists for human rights and others who have been assigned to collect evidence have been prohibited from visiting the places where such crimes have taken place. the local capacity to count the numbers of people killed for who they are, the number of people displaced, and the number of women raped and tortured does not simply exist. The magnitude of the crimes that have been committed and recorded with us is shocking enough, but we know that those that have yet to be found and recorded will be even more shocking. Ethiopia has today the largest internally displaced people in Africa, and the majority are the Amharas. The ongoing war has revealed enormous crimes against humanity bordering genocide, but certainly crimes against humanity and war crimes against the people of Tigray. The Prime Minister has admitted this much. Its magnitude has yet to be revealed, and along with other crimes being compiled as I speak, will be presented to either domestic courts if stability reigns, or to the International Criminal Court, or the ICJ to the United Nations Security Council. This could happen not through our modest efforts alone, but rather by and through international human rights organizations and other independent organizations who have the mandate, the resources, and the responsibilities to protect the safety of humanity against atrocities, war crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity. On our part, we have organized a sophisticated data collection system, and we have collected enough information to bring the perpetrators to justice. But while acts of genocide and crimes against humanity continue as I speak, it would be difficult to tell a complete story to bring the perpetrators to justice as soon as we would have liked to. The crimes have become so routine that it has become difficult for our own analysts and the international legal councils we hired to catch up with events and build timely and solid cases that includes all the known and ongoing crimes. Those who have international mandate and resources should be able to go to the country and record all the evidence and incidents that can help all of us bring these perpetrators to justice. The sooner, the better, because while the international community is busy handling and following the current situations, evidence are being destroyed and witnesses also be eliminated. When children, mothers, and fathers are being slaughtered like animals for who they are, because that is genocide. Genocide, the difference between genocide and crimes against humanity is the intention. In genocide, it's the intention to kill or torture or displace or commit crimes against a certain kind of group of people, the intention. So when children, mothers, and fathers are being slaughtered like animals for who they are, people mutilated and their body parts thrown for animals, when bodies are dragged on the streets, when pregnant mothers are being butchered, when wives and mothers are raped in front of their husbands and children, when people are beheaded in public, and when men's organs are displayed as trophies, when Christians are put in a room and burnt alive, when many are murdered and thousands forced to flee, seeking shelter and protection, when those who wore the uniform to uphold and enforce the law are either participants of the crimes or are onlookers, that is when justice died in Ethiopia. When chanting for more blood resonates across the country amidst the silence of the government by not condemning the acts nor consoling the victims or helping the displaced, that is when the empathy of leaders died in Ethiopia. When the government refused to neither name the crime nor name the perpetrators, who everybody else knows, that is when accountability died in Ethiopia. When Amharas and Christians in rural Ethiopia are being persecuted for who they are, that is when fascism reigned in Ethiopia. When the Prime Minister refused to launch operations to free the young students of Dambidolo, girls kidnapped by the Oromo extremists, that is when his true color manifested. When the war has indiscriminately destroyed the lives and livelihood of millions in both Tigray and currently intensely and extensively in the Amhara regions, that is when the ties that bind the Tigray people and the Amhara people for the last 3,000 years have been severely damaged. There are no doubts that genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes of enormous proportion has and is taking place in Ethiopia. I am a lawyer specialized in international law. I have worked for 30 years as a United Nations consultant in all the war-ravaged areas, countries of Africa, including Rwanda during the genocide, and in Liberia, Central African Republic, DRC, Darfur, South Sudan, and South Sudan. What is happening in Ethiopia is as brutal as those I have witnessed, and could even be greater when the whole truth is revealed. The evidence I have examined, as harrowing as they are, reveal the intensity of the hate propaganda that the international community did not bother to listen to what was unraveling in Ethiopia for 30 years, all based on fake and distorted narratives. If these acts of crimes do not bring justice, we can categorically state that there is no sense of justice left in this international community. These criminals who tortured, cannibalized, raped, burnt, crucified, murdered are not brought to justice, whatever credibility is left of the international justice will have completely disappeared. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, was established in 2002 to reconstruct the credibility of the international justice system after the 1994 Rwandan genocide. Now, it has a challenge, a huge challenge, and we will ensure humanity will make the ICC and the United Nations as accountable as the perpetrators of these crimes. I want people to understand that there are no phases for genocide. Somehow, these phases created by Genocide Watch for analytical purposes are confused with the definition prescribed by the Genocide Convention. Genocide Watch is an NGO created 20 years ago. The Genocide Convention was established in 1946, immediately after the Second World War. These phases are not part of the convention. The Geneva Convention on the Prevention of Genocide is the simplest and most clearly understandable convention the United Nations has ever promulgated. The Genocide Conventions define genocide any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group as such, like killing, causing serious damage, displacing, torturing, and so on. Crimes against humanity include also murder, killing, torture, displacement, rape, etc., and numerous crimes detailed in the convention. Then, mind you, the most important in our case is the intention. So the intention in our case, in the genocide case, was to kill and to eliminate, to destroy Amharas and those associated with Amharas and Amhara Christians and Amhara Muslims. This is recorded, and we have irrefutable evidences to prove our case, but we need the support of the international community. All the above have taken place in Ethiopia 20 years after the ICC was established, and particularly since Prime Minister came to power. This Prime Minister came to power. The Ethiopian political situation has evolved from crimes against humanity, ethnic rivalry, to a policy of ethnic cleansing of non-Oromos, and to publicly declared genocide to exterminate the Christian Orthodox Church and its members and the Amhara ethnic group with the full knowledge and sometimes participation of senior government officials whom we have named in our last report when we submitted 2 cases to our international legal firm. The case of Ethiopia today is of much concern to peace and security, not in Ethiopia, but also to the region and the continent and beyond. Though this has been stated, it's my strong opinion that the Ethiopian crisis should be handled only by its own people, perhaps with the help of the African Union. Any attempt to involve the Western powers, the United Nations, or the Arab League members, or any extraneous elements will complicate the situation and make Ethiopia a country with probability of proxy war, which will have unpredictable, unimaginable regional consequences. We request the international community to put their hand off Ethiopia and instead assist or support internal dialogue and humanitarian operations. The only path to stop genocide, crimes against humanity, and the war for power and dominance of one ethnic group is an internal dialogue between the people, no matter how long it takes, and reach a consensus. The problem that persists in Ethiopia will not stop with the removal of this government, but with the establishment of a new dispensation that addresses the underlying issues that led to where we are today and bring sustainable peace. The sacrifices of the dead, the injured, the displaced, the tortured, and all the victims will not be in vain if we do not bring justice and sustainable peace. The fire in Ethiopia is set by Abiy's own Oromo colleagues' fabricated history, which makes Amharas the historical enemies of Oromos and Tigray. The Prime Minister grew up studying this narrative. He never denied this version of false history, nor did he condemn the hate propaganda, which was being told by Oromo Media Network, OMN, the Oromo version of Rwanda Radio Mekonnen. The Ethiopian Nero started a fire of a different nature. He was not fully aware that this fire will soon consume him and he will face the same fate. This is what history tells us over and over again. The current war must end with agreements for sustainable peace and not a patchwork that gives a semblance of a united Ethiopia. That journey for a united peaceful Ethiopia is very long after so much sacrifice and crimes, but this peaceful journey can start today, not with revenge or the shouts of victory, but with humility and embarrassment that we were able to kill and hate each other to this level and put into the history books as the proud, independent people who were seen as the symbol of Black people's pride and independence. We can also show the world that we have the capacity to restore our former glory of people who struggled hard and won wars to keep the union, which is being challenged today by lack of leadership. Therefore, all attempts to bring peace in Ethiopia must be both short-term and long-term in a way that addresses the root causes of the civil war. Justice is one. Without justice and punishment, there cannot even be discussion about forgiveness. Forgetting is impossible at this moment for those who witnessed atrocities and saw their loved ones brutalized. Forgiving is difficult and forgetting is impossible. Ethiopian society can begin to live together with tolerance and peace only after justice has been served and those responsible for ignoring and fanning the fire are identified and brought to justice. The future of Ethiopia depends upon truth, justice, reparations, and reconciliations in this order. New leaders have to come out and liberate the people from the bondage of false history and propaganda. The Horn of Africa is the most militarized security zone in the world for various strategic reasons. The continued civil war will cost millions of lives, destabilize the region, create the conditions for a proxy war, and open the gates for Al-Shabaab, ISIS, and other violent extremists who are already in place because of the actions and policies of this prime minister. Extremists, violent extremists thrive in such kind of situation, instability, destabilization. In this digitalized world, it has become difficult to talk about the truth. In the case of Ethiopia, we appeal to social media activists, journalists, both domestic and international, not to try to make money to build a career by telling intentionally false stories. Irresponsible journalists are the silent warriors who are dragging this country to endless war and perhaps, God forbid, inflame the region to an endless chaos that can shake the continent and beyond. But journalists and pundits should understand that Ethiopia cannot be compared to Yugoslavia. These are two different countries, two different civilizations, two different historical realities. Ethiopia cannot be partitioned in any form. Declarations of secession could be made by any of the ethnic groups, but none can ever exist in peace. They will be at war with each other for centuries to come. It's not realistic and never should be considered as an option for the current crisis. These are people who have lived together for time immemorial, and the common ties that bind them are too strong and complicated to be broken by declarations of secession. The only option is dialogue and long-term formula on how people can live peacefully and equally coexist with their colorful differences. The only path is the truth, justice, reparation, and reconciliation, again, in that order. Truth and reconciliation cannot exist without justice and reparation. A blueprint of this has been published in my recent book, now in the market in Geneva, and soon in the USA. Owners of the media conglomerates, social media extremists are advised to stop propagating fake and false narratives that make secession a possible option. These are crimes of incitement to prolong the war for unrealistic goal. Those who do so are responsible as those who are committing genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes, and they too can face international justice for inciting and fomenting. And in conclusion, please be on the side of truth. Look at the bigger picture and the history of Ethiopia and the implications of civil war in a country with over 100 million people. Look at the implications of migrations, violent extremism, proxy war, and the extent of the destruction of lives and livelihoods when you write and inform the international community. Your responsibility is huge. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mr. Dawit. Now I will give the stage to Mesfen. Mr. Mesfen, if you are there, the stage is yours.
I think you hear me now. Okay. Good afternoon, good morning for those of you who are in the morning time, and for people in Geneva, good afternoon. I am an Ethiopian, an ordinary citizen, working together with Ethiopian Salvation and Survival Association, trying to understand the problem in our country and trying to help our people. Most of the damage are well expressed by Yodith and Shalaka Dawit, Major Dawit. I just want to share my views on what causes all this damage. I want to say about the causes of this war and this killing, this genocide. In my understanding and my friends' research, we finally found out that Amharas being targeted because they are the majority in Ethiopia, the majority ethnic group in Ethiopia. And minorities, when they took power, they targeted the Amharas people, because these Amharas people have been leading the country for a long time. And they have the capital of leading a country for long years.
Hello, Mesfen. Your voice is good. Can you just check your mic? No, we don't hear you. Is it from our side?
Yes, now I think
No,
it is from.
it's okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm sorry, I don't know where I stopped, but I will watch any time from now. So my question, my idea of the cause of this conflict and this killing is because Amharas are majority of ethnic group in Ethiopia. And for minorities, this was a threat. So they had to design a system to make sure this group of people will be made as small as possible in many ways, economically, politically, in the amount of land they own, and also their impact in politics and economy. This one of the reasons that shows this is based on this ethnic federalism that the newcomers, TPLF and OLF, brought into picture. They came up with restricting the Ethiopian regions. We had in Ethiopia regions, administrative regions. We believe for a long time we are one country and we share the whole country for all Ethiopians. And every Ethiopians were living and working and married to any corner of Ethiopia. But this has changed because of these new rebels who came to power, OLF and TPLF. So they have to restrict what Amhara's proper to be as small as possible. So they have to take a lot of land away from the Amharas. A lot of land or a lot of cities and even regions have been classified into another area. And also, the second biggest ethnic group in Ethiopia is also boosted to grab a bigger coverage of Ethiopia. They just redistrict this area, 9 different administrative regions into one region called Oromia. There was no Oromia before. There was no Amhara before. People were just living their simple life. So once they come with this redistricting, making sure this Amhara people became short and disfranchised from economy, disfranchised from opportunities, then what happened was they came up with a blueprint how to implement that. That is the Ethiopian government law. We cannot call it constitution because constitution is normally prepared and drafted and discussed, and also people have to give consent and also ratify. It has never gone through these processes. So they came up with a government law that empowers Oromia people and disfranchise the Amhara people and empowers the Tigrayan, making sure whatever they plan can be implemented. This is basically for the Amhara people. But this is not also the Amhara problem. This is the whole Ethiopia problem. The reason being, Ethiopians are removed from having a title for home ownership. Land ownership is given from a human being to the new districted regions. They call them regions. On the Ethiopian language, they call them regions. But actually, in English, on the English version of this government law, they are called sovereign states. Sovereign states, dismantling a sovereign Ethiopia, who have been a country for long. At the same time, this country has been the founder of AU and United Nations, a member for a long time, have contributed a lot for world peace. But now, these people who came to power, they removed the Ethiopian people from their right. Ethiopians are not sovereign anymore. Sovereignty is given by God to human beings. But this is already taken away from Ethiopian citizens and given to those created ideals called regions. So this was the strategy they used to disfranchise people. Another thing they did was, those people who are born from more than one ethnic group, they are not entitled for anything. So most Ethiopian people, maybe 20 million, more than that, are a breed of more than one ethnic group. All these people, they cannot associate with any of this. So they have designed this government law so that it will make Ethiopians less of a person, without any right for economy. Economic right is already taken off because the land is the major part. So land is taken away from Ethiopian people. Sovereignty is also taken, which is given by God for a human being. That's why the human right is based its core to be sovereign, not to be killed, not to be harmed, to live with dignity and freedom. But we Ethiopians are not entitled to that. So the reason is, most people think that constitution means government law, but in Ethiopia it is not. In Ethiopia there is a fraudulent law, fraudulent, criminal, and also illegal law currently being implemented. I just want to discuss few points from this constitution. For example, you will never see a country on earth with this type of preamble. Constitution is a social contract, you all know. A social contract, any contract, has three basic elements: identifying the contracting party, consent, and ratification. Look this one from this perspective. The preamble says, we the nations, nationalities, peoples of Ethiopia, strongly committed in full and free exercise of our right to self-determination, to building a political community founded on the rule of law, capable of ensuring lasting peace, enduring a democratic order, and advancing our economic and social development. I never seen one constitution that starts like this. Maybe AU, African Union, or the United Nations or European Union says like this: we the nations, we are one nation. We are not different nations. We have been a nation for more than 3,000 years. We have been known as a member of African Union, United Nations, as a country known by Ethiopia. So it should have said we Ethiopians, but they don't want to say that. They want to put different classification of Ethiopian people. Some of them are nationalities. Some of them are called people. Why? Because the nations are considered different countries, like 9 different countries. Those 9 different countries are classified ethnically. So each nation has citizens. Its citizens are made, they are identified by their ethnicity. The rest of the people who are not associated with that ethnicity, they are called peoples. These are the peoples who not have any right, a right to be elected, a right to elect, a right to own land. They don't have all this in Ethiopia. So people are classified into those people who are with right and those without right. The reason is many Ethiopians, they are lost their political right because of this statement. Let me tell you the other one. It says sovereignty of the people. The title says sovereignty of the people. But here it says all sovereign power resides in the nations. It resides in the nations. It says nationalities. People are no more sovereign. It is those countries called nations, and those people with some ethnicity, they are called nationalities. They are the ones which are considered sovereign. Let me read the other one. It says the Ethiopian flag shall consist of green at the top, yellow in the middle, and red at the bottom, and shall have the national emblem at the center. For 3,000 years, Ethiopia didn't have any emblem in the center. With the time of the king, with the time of Derg, we had a flag with 3 colors: red, yellow, and red, green, yellow, and red. And this, it says, there is an emblem that says the equality of the nations. It's not about Ethiopia. This thing all talks about the nations. It's not about Ethiopia. So any Ethiopian cannot say this is my my constitution, or it's not even a government law for Ethiopia. It is for the 4 nations, the 9 nations. Article 39 this says this: right of nations, nationalities, and peoples. And it says every nation, nationalities, and peoples in Ethiopia have unconditional right to self-determination, including the right to secession, without any condition, unconditionally. A country, an institution, a constitution never been written to destroy a country. This is one. No constitution in history is written this way, to destroy an existing country. This is the only one that destroys a country like this. All these 4 or 5 or many of them are written for the next one, for Article 47. Article 47 starts member states of the Federal Democratic Republic. It says member state. Imagine, as if we are member states, as if we have member states in African Union, as United Nations. These are member states under a name called Ethiopia. They call them member states. Even they don't call it Ethiopia. They just say Federal Democratic Republic. They call it member state. In Amharic, in Ethiopian local language, they call it region. Actually, because people will ask, we are not different countries. We are only one country. They might ask this question. So in order not to ask this question, they formulate it in Amharic. For Ethiopian, they call regional state. But on this legal document, it says member states. And it says member states of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia are the following: the state of Tigray, the state of Afar, the state of Amhara, the state of Oromia, the state of Somalia, and up to 9. It says the last one is the state of Harar people. And it says nations, nationalities, and peoples within states enumerated above of this article have the right to establish at any time their own state. All those conditions are prepared for these countries to be another country. Ethiopia is nothing is mentioned in this thing about Ethiopia, but this government for 30 years were reporting these 5 articles to the United Nations. They were reporting this continuously to ICCPR without the knowledge of the people. This constitution, pseudo-constitution, I can say, have never been ratified by Ethiopian people, have never been promulgated to the Ethiopian people. They never know about this. They are the OLF, the Oromo Liberation Front, and the TPLF, the Tigray Liberation Front. They came together, they drafted it together with the help of the EPLF, the Eritrean Liberation Front. They came here, and it's only the TPLF who ratified it. Nobody discussed it. Nobody, no Ethiopian, except the people of TPLF, nobody gave consent. Nobody ratified. So we cannot call this constitution. It is a pseudo-constitution. And it is registered as Ethiopia. Nothing says about Ethiopia. It's just fraudulent, making people think it is Ethiopia, but it's not Ethiopia. It's not written for Ethiopia. This is the reason why the current war is elongated for this much long time. The reason being, all these 3 parties, including the government, which is the third one, EPLF, the Eritrean Liberation Front, this time the Eritrean government, has a big role in Ethiopia this time with the current Ethiopian politics. TPLF fighting now to regain power. OLF dormant, but killing Amharas from all cleansing Amharas from its old regions. The government is empowering this to happen. It's taking a long time. Until the Amharas get destroyed with this war, they want to extend the war for a long time. So we, Ethiopians, our forefathers became a member of the United Nations and the African Union. One, to help people like ours. Another one is for us sometime, time like this. We need help from the international community. I might disagree with the previous speaker. We need the help of the United Nations. We have paid our dues in the world peace. We have helped people who are under different tyrant regions. We fought for freedom as an Ethiopian. We fought for world peace. We are known, we fight for against...
Mesfen, excuse me. Could you please conclude? Yeah.
Okay, I will. Okay. I will.
Because we have, again, two speakers who's going to speak.
I'm sorry. Okay,
Thank you.
We Ethiopians need help from the international community. The help we need is, one, to stop this war, to help us stop this war. It is only for these four groups I mentioned earlier, they have gun power. The rest of the people, 80 million people, do not have gun power. The only thing they can say, maybe they can come out to demonstrate. The Ethiopian government signed ICCPR in 1993. In 1993, they signed ICCPR saying that if the people asks for democracy, the government said it's not going to suffocate the people. So the Ethiopian people have the right to ask for democracy. This is the best time to ask for democracy. At the same time, it is the best time for the Ethiopia, the world people, the world community, the UN and AU to help us. It is, I think, all the reasons they have to help us, because we are in a bad condition. Ethiopians have done a lot of their homework. They prepared a draft constitution. Many Ethiopians have already drafted a constitution based on the UN ICCPR models. We took a referendum, a federal type of model. We prepared a draft. Other people have already prepared draft. The only thing we need is peace. And it can only be given with the help of, because the people who need peace do not have power, do not have gun power. The people who want to have different countries, they all have power, gun power. We Ethiopians do not have gun power. It's only those people who wanted to create another country, they have power. So Ethiopia has, it is the only Ethiopia which is a member of this African Union and the World United Nations. So it is, I'm sincerely, desperately requesting the world community to help us in getting a referendum for this new constitution. We want to have a referendum on constitution of the bad one and the new one, and then help us implementing this constitution to Ethiopia. Ethiopians are desperate, being killed every day. So sorry, I took more time. Thank you very much. This is all I can say.
Thank you, Mesfen. Yeah, it is true. The the Amharan genocide has started because of the constitution, because of what we call the constitution right now. And the Ethiopian people are asking from every corner to change that constitution, to have really something on which we can live in peace. So that is true. So thank you, Mesfen, for that explanation that you have given us. And now I'm going to invite Mr. Donald. He's from Sweden. He has been traveled to Ethiopia, and he saw the condition of the internally displaced people in Afar and also Amhara region. So please welcome to the stage, and we would like to hear what you have seen as an European who arrived on the place, who has the only information that you've got, I think it is from the mainstream medias. And what did you find when you go and talk to the people? It's yours.
Thank you very much. I will say some few words from a very, very different angle than we heard before now today. And I have been reporting from the Horn of Africa since 1987, frequently, going back and forth. And so for me, it was very natural to try to find out what's happening in the conflict today. And like you said, we actually don't even have information from mainstream media. We almost didn't have any kind of information. We were more or less, there were more or less just propaganda, which is normal in every conflict, in every war. We suffer from the propaganda, but normally it's more balanced with the journalism and the normal reliable reporting. But in this case, it was very, very little reliable reporting for various reasons. So after applying for journalist visa for 8 months, I could actually finally travel to Ethiopia, to Addis. And for me, it was, I had several subjects, the war in general, of course, to see what's happening. And I want to look more deeper into the first and probably the biggest massacre in Dalikoma, because it was just few days after the war broke out in early November last year. And the most recent massacre, when I was there in August, September, that was my period. And that was in Dalikoma in Afar region. And also I have a special interest of whether there was child conscript used, because during my earlier reporting in the 90s especially, TPLF used plenty of children soldiers in the minefields, etc. So I wanted to see, is there any use of child soldiers today? So this was the topics I was trying to find out. And I started my journey to Afar region. And as you all know, during the ceasefire from the federal forces, TPLF could take the opportunity to expand out from the Tigray province into Afar in the east and into Amhara region. And I visit from Kombolcha to Samara, further on to Dalikoma. And the question was, I heard 12 people have been killed in Dalikoma. That was a BBC report. But I also heard from another report saying 8 people have been killed, and from another report saying 240. So why was the discrepancy so big in the reporting? And Dalikoma was not the only case. The same was, of course, in Dalikoma. So I decided to visit Dalikoma to see myself, of course, and interview the widows and the villagers, the farmers, and to see is there any mass graves, etc. And I find out that it was actually 12 people killed, but at the hospital. So the BBC report was in one way correct, but they haven't reported the other killed in the same attack, because TPLF could, since there was no federal forces resisting the TPLF forces, they could easily just attack the unarmed civilian population, which caused mass dead. So the 12 dead was correct, but only in the hospital. The 8 dead was also correct, but also that those were the 8 on their way to the hospital, but actually died before they reached the hospital. And there was another 52 dead in the Digidiga Health Center in between, just outside, not far from Dalikoma itself. And another 168 persons, people, women, child, men, immediately killed in their homes in Dalikoma, outside the huts, while they were burned huts. And of course, I couldn't verify exactly the 240 dead bodies. It was kind of trustworthy when you saw the 3 places for the mass graves. This was, big areas and big mass graves. But at least 240 was more a number more believable for me than 8 or 12. So in the besides there is an example of a massacre and killing of civilian people, it also shows that media have very difficult to report something correct in this war. So in one way, for me at least, I don't believe anything I hear unless I could investigate it myself. And also in the same time when I was there, TPLF then controlled at least 4 zones in 4 woredas. And we, of course, with looting, killing, and a large scale of rapes, etc. So, I mean, I'm visiting the food store, which burned, the health center destroyed, schools, the usual, as you know, very much more about probably. And back in Kombolcha, I met 10,000s of IDPs, which is also have been mentioned. The mass, the people fleeing from the villages. In this case, they came from Irana, Mersa, and Hara, etc. And those places was controlled since 20 days when I was there of TPLF. So they took the opportunity to expand while it was ceasefire. And I bought a map late 90s in Addis Ababa at the Ethiopian Map Authority. And I was surprised because the Tigray province was much bigger than it actually is. It was a big part into Eritrea and into Afar and Amhara area, which showed the old plan from the very beginning in the 70s, probably, when TPLF were struggling for the Greater Tigray. So that was kind of visual proof on the ground, seeing them, and again, expanding, following the map. And then from there, back to Addis and continue to West Amhara, South Amhara, and already in Debra Tabor, there was shelling, shooting, killing, and in Debra Tabor itself, the heavily populated area, the bombs have actually destroyed houses, killed families. So it shows that a kind of army, the rebels they call, or the separatists, actually want to expand for a plan either to achieve the Greater Tigray finally. But the same thing in Maikadra. There was a big, huge discrepancy of numbers and who was the perpetrators, etc. And so I went to Humera, interviewing people, continued to Maikadra. And yeah, the same thing again. BBC reported some hundreds killed, and also there was an insecurity about the perpetrators. Some have mentioned TPLF, but still I was not sure, according to BBC. Reuters reported after investigating some documents saying at least 700 have been killed, comparing different lists. The Gondar University have their own committee, and they told me at least 900 have been killed. And then going to Maikadra itself, to the places, to the village, meeting the widows, farmers, the local population, watching to filming and watching the mass graves once again. And old men came and told me then, we have been buried body by body, and we have now counted 1,500. I heard there was another figures about 1,200, but it doesn't matter actually which the most correct number. It just shows that already after the conflict, the war broke out, TPLF actually made the biggest massacre so far. And again, I ask, of course, since I'm a journalist, who did this? Who killed your families, your husband, your son, etc.? And all of them, of course, said TPLF. And while asking, how do you know? It's so easy in this propaganda war to mention anything. And then during the period of that time, TPLF was actually administrating the area. It's the Western Amhara, but TPLF claim it's Tigray, so they were administrating Maikadra, sorry. And since the inhabitants in Maikadra knew these people, so they could give me the names, a list of names, knowing them since before in the administration, seeing them participating or leading the massacre itself. So this is not journalist from now, because my conclusion is, that's my personal conclusion, it's that if TPLF are going for their Greater Tigray, they have to continue the war. Ceasefire is not an option for them, because their whole existence rely on achieve the Greater Tigray, or at least overthrow the government in Addis. So either they just continue to achieving the goal, or the international community. I know that not only Washington, the Western community is negotiating. They are trying to give TPLF something they can accept as a good compromise, which should be a strong influence in a new government. So yeah, that was my few words, just visiting on the ground myself, and trying to find out why media have been so has a huge discrepancy between the reporting and numbers. And yeah, we all know that's the number one in war. The wrong numbering, to showing the world that everybody is right. So yeah, that's my, I don't know if you have any question otherwise, but that's what I have to tell you this time.
Thank you so much for your intervention. So we are going now to Laetitia, who is the president of Stop Amhara Genocide. Just before giving the floor to her, I would like just to summarize what we have expressed so far, because this press conference was titled "The Amhara Persecuted in Ethiopia and Why." So the reason is it comes from the Constitution. Legally, why the Constitution is written that way, it is because of power struggle. The TPLF, which is at that time 4-5% of the total population was in power, wanted to stay in power. In order to stay in power, they had to find a strategy. So they used the colonizer country's strategy. So they took the two most populated ethnic groups, Oromo and Amhara. As the Amhara was ruling for a long time, they said, okay, the Amhara is going to be the oppressors, and the Oromo, we're going to tell them that they were oppressed by the Amharas. So they prepared all generation during the 30 years who were chanting in school that the neftanya, the word pejorative that they used to to talk about the Amharas. Neftanya killed my father and cut off the breast of my mother. That kind of songs that they were singing in their language every morning in elementary school. So they had that hatred now, and they can just, when TPLF has lost power, they just launch those generation into the Amharas, and they kill even their neighbors. So one of the testimonies that I have heard is in Welega. There is a woman who was slaughtered by her neighbor that she saw growing up with her children. And she was asking him, why are you doing that? And he said that I don't have a choice, I have to do it. And he was crying. And he couldn't really cut her throat off. So he left her with an open wound. And in Welega right now, it is forbidden to give medical assistance for the Amharas. So she's still with an open wound. So I don't know by now if she is already dead of infection or something. So that's what's going on. And another question that was raised to me earlier was why the TPLF and the Abiy Ahmed government both are attacking the Amharas. And my answer is both of them, they oppose each other this last 3 years because of power. It's a power struggle which is between them. Before that, for 27 years, they were friends. They were abusing the Ethiopian people together. As Mesfen has stated, Mesfen is from the Gurage Ethnic group, and there are others from Sidama, from Walaita in their association. Those people also, they are the one who didn't have any voice, if you would like. So, but both the Oromo people and the Oromo Liberation Front, or the Abiy Ahmed administration and TPLF thinks the Amharas are threat for their power. And in order to stay in power, they also need land. So that is the reason why the Amhara are killed by both actors. So now I will give the stage to Laetitia. She's going to speak in French. So if you are in YouTube, if you are looking at YouTube, and also I think in Zoom, one of our staff will be posting you the English version of her speech. So you can follow there. Thank you.
Merci Yodith. Bonjour à tout le monde qui nous suit, qui sont là présents. Bon, je m'appelle Laetitia Brunner et Ouimbabazi, nom de jeune fille. Je suis la présidente, comme elle a dit Yodith, de l'association Stop Amhara Genocide. Je suis d'origine rwandaise et je vis en Suisse depuis une vingtaine d'années. Alors, l'association Stop Amhara Genocide, on est un petit comité qui se lève pour lutter contre ce génocide des Amharas en Éthiopie, une des ethnies éthiopiennes qui est en train de subir un nettoyage ethnique dans les différents coins du pays. Les adeptes des TPLF et les Oromo sont les auteurs de ces atrocités. Nos buts principaux sont d'arrêter ce génocide et de sensibiliser les gens en utilisant tous les moyens possibles, par exemple la presse, les réseaux sociaux, pour que les gens puissent être mis au courant de ce qui se passe. Aussi pour nous soutenir et nous aider à aider cette population qui est en souffrance. Malgré la preuve en images, en vidéo et les témoignages des rescapés de ces génocides, et personnellement, ce que j'attends de Yodith, de ce que je vois sur les réseaux sociaux, et personne n'en parle. Tout le monde fait comme si rien n'était en train de se passer, ni les ONG, ni les élites n'agissent. Ils s'en fichent complètement. Je dis ça parce que moi, j'ai vécu le génocide du Rwanda en 1994. Je peux comprendre que les gens s'en fichent, que ces ONG s'en fichent. À ce moment-là où j'ai vécu le génocide, je ne les ai pas vus. Ils étaient là, je les voyais avec mes yeux. Les casques bleus, ils étaient là. Mais qu'est-ce qu'ils ont fait? Je peux garantir qu'ils n'ont rien fait. Bon, je suis une rescapée de ce génocide de Tutsi au Rwanda en 1994. Moi, j'avais 16 ans. J'étais en pleine adolescence, en pleine croissance. Croyez-moi, je sais ce que c'est le génocide. Et quand j'entends tout ça, je ne peux pas croiser les bras. Je ne peux pas. Parce que j'ai l'impression, ce n'est même pas une impression, ce que les gens vivent là-bas, c'est la même chose que moi j'ai vécu. Quand Yodith a parlé, ils sont en train de mourir, ils sont en train de les tuer en les disant « Allez-y chez vous, vous n'êtes pas Éthiopiens ». C'est la même histoire au Rwanda. Quand ils nous tuaient, nous les Tutsis, ils nous disaient « Vous n'êtes pas d'ici, allez, partez ». Ils jetaient les gens dans les rivières pour que les corps, ils tuaient et puis ils les mettaient dans les rivières pour les envoyer chez eux. C'est où chez eux? Je suis née rwandais, je suis née Tutsi et je suis du sud du Rwanda. Ne m'en parle pas autre chose. Je suis d'où? Jusqu'où on te dit tu doutes même qui tu es. Alors quand j'entends tout ça, moi je ne peux pas croiser les bras. Je ne peux pas. Je ne sais pas si vous avez entendu vraiment de ce génocide du Rwanda. Il y avait les ONU, les casques bleus, les ONG. Ils couraient à gauche, à droite. Moi, je ne sais pas ce qu'ils faisaient. Mais on criait. Personne ne s'arrêtait. Ça passait même à la presse, à la télévision. Mais pendant 3 mois que je courais à gauche, à droite en train de me cacher, je n'ai pas vu ces ONG. Et ce que je vais dire par là, c'est que tous ces gens que j'ai perdus, presque 100 000 personnes, ma propre famille, mes amis, mes camarades de l'école, et mes voisins, toutes ces connaissances qui étaient autour de moi depuis ma naissance jusqu'aux 16 ans, eux, ils sont partis. Ma maison des parents, plus rien, restés seuls au monde. Ils étaient où, ces ONG? Parce que j'entends parler, oh, les ONG peuvent faire quelque chose. Ils font quoi? Ils font quoi c'est quoi leur appel dans ce monde? Sur cette terre, c'est quoi leur appel? Moi, je me pose la question. Si quelqu'un sait, peut me dire. Ce que je comprends maintenant, ce que j'ai compris, c'est que je ne peux pas compter sur eux. Ce que j'ai envie de dire, de faire, c'est que moi, je me lève avec qui veut se lever avec moi, de faire quelque chose. Sans compter sur eux. Parce que je les ai bien vus, ils n'ont rien fait, ils n'ont rien même dit, parce qu'ils avaient ce pouvoir de dire quelque chose au gouvernement rwandais, au monde, partout. Ils pouvaient faire quelque chose. Mais ce qu'ils ont fait au bout d'un moment, c'est de monter dans les avions et partir chez eux. Même si mon aide, même si ma petite force, elle est comme une petite goutte dans la mer, mais je crois à ma petite force, tout petite. Mais j'appelle à chacun d'amener sa petite force. Et je suis sûre, je crois à ces forces qu'on peut y arriver. Mais c'est qui peut arrêter le génocide? pendant 3 mois au Rwanda, qui c'est qui a arrêté le génocide? C'est la personne qui n'a pas peur de se lancer. C'est quelqu'un qui voit loin. C'est quelqu'un qui est humain, qui n'est pas, comment je peux dire, égoïste. Quelqu'un qui est intelligent même. Comment tu peux dire tuer ton voisin, ton enfant, ton propre enfant? C'est quoi l'intelligence là-dedans? On étudie quoi à l'école? Tuer l'autre, tu gagnes quoi? Moi, j'appelle à chacun vraiment de nous rejoindre en tant qu'une petite association qui vient de se lever, de venir vers nous, de se lever, de réfléchir ensemble, de travailler ensemble, d'appeler partout, de parler, de crier, jusqu'à ce qu'on arrive au but. Venez vers nous. Nous avons besoin de vous. Surtout vous les Éthiopiens. Ne cherchez pas à courir derrière de ces ONG. Vous-même, vous pouvez le faire. Qui c'est qui a arrêté le génocide au Rwanda? C'est nous-mêmes les Rwandais. Les Rwandais qui s'est levés, qui étaient à l'extérieur du pays, qui s'est dit non, ça suffit. Après 3 mois, ils nous ont sauvés. Ce sont des Rwandais. Vous les Éthiopiens, levez-vous. Il n'y a plus même rien à se dire, c'est juste, on se lève. On cherche Stop Amhara Genocide, on va réfléchir ensemble, on va y arriver ensemble. Nos amis, les amis des Éthiopiens, les Africains, les Européens, venez tous ensemble, on peut faire quelque chose. Ne compte plus sur ces ONG. Parce que j'aime ça que les ONG sont devenus les dieux du monde. Et pourtant, moi personnellement, je ne sais pas. Non, je n'ai même pas envie d'en parler. Vraiment. Tous les rescapés du Rwanda peuvent vous parler de l'ONG, des casques bleus. Ils peuvent vous parler. Ce n'est pas eux qui nous ont cachés. Même te voyaient où tu te cachais, ils passaient tout droit. C'était quoi son but là-dedans? C'était quoi leur rôle là-dedans? Ils disent que c'est pour maintenir la paix. Ça, maintenir la paix? Ok. Est-ce qu'ils ont parlé à ces génocidaires de dire arrêtez de tuer ces gens, ils ne savent même pas la politique. Un bébé, une femme qui est enceinte, cherchez le bébé qui est dans le ventre. Parce qu'il sera Tutsi, il faut le tuer. Mais cherchez vraiment l'intelligence d'un être humain. Les ONG étaient là. ONU était là. Devenus comme le militaire de Paul Kagame qui a eu cette force de dire venez. Ils étaient combien? Ils n'arrivaient même pas à 1000 militaires. Mais ils se sont dit, on y va. Un qui meurt, l'autre qui continue, un qui meurt, l'autre qui continue, jusqu'à ce qu'ils arrivent dans le pays sauver l'ethnie Tutsi. Toi aussi, tu peux y arriver avec moi. Tu peux venir vraiment, on peut faire quelque chose. Surtout en parler. En parler à gauche, à droite, à nos amis, aux presses. N'aie pas peur. De toute façon, quoi que ce soit, la vérité est devant. Mais ne mets pas les enfants là-dedans. Ne mets pas les femmes là-dedans. Ne mets pas tout ce qui n'est pas politicien. Ne les mets pas dans ce jeu. Peu importe que tu peux aider. Tu peux donner un pantalon, tu peux donner une robe, tu peux donner 10 francs, 5 francs, 100 francs, 1000 si tu veux. On a besoin de beaucoup de choses, cette population. Moi, j'ai eu faim. J'ai manqué à manger, j'ai manqué à habiller. J'avais rien pendant ce moment. C'est pour ça n'importe quoi que tu peux donner peut aider, peut sauver la vie. Personne ne choisit de ce qu'il est. On se trouve au monde, mais on n'a rien choisi. S'il te plaît, ne prends pas la vie de l'autre parce que ça et ça et ça. Et une chose aussi que je peux rajouter, j'ai envie de parler à ces génocidaires, à ces gens qui sont en train de tuer, les Oromo, quelqu'un qui lève la main pour tuer. Tu sais, je sais bien que vous allez m'entendre, je sais bien que vous suivez tout ce qui se passe. Quoi que ce soit, tu fais ça, tu auras ton paye. Tu auras ton paye. Même les génocidaires du Rwanda jusqu'à maintenant sont en train de payer. Tu peux pas, tu peux fuir où tu voudras, même ton cœur lui-même va te juger. Ça ne sert à rien de tuer pour avoir ça et ça et ça. La soif du pouvoir, tu vas mourir même avec la soif. Tu vas mourir toujours en cherchant à te combler. C'est pas tuer l'autre que tu vas te combler. C'est pas ça qui va te combler. Tôt ou tard, tu vas payer. Tu vas regretter les cris de ces enfants, de ces femmes, de ces vieux, de ces jeunes. Tu vas le payer. Tu as meilleur temps d'arrêter de poser l'arme et tout discuter, tout dans la paix, sans verser du sang de ces gens qui sont fidèles, qui n'ont rien à voir avec cette politique. Joignez-nous à lutter contre ces atroces. Aidez-nous à arrêter ce génocide. Participez à nos campagnes de sensibilisation. Mettons à la pression aux autorités locales et internationales pour à leur tour qu'ils mettent la pression sur le gouvernement éthiopien pour faire cesser ces tueries, ce génocide. Grâce à vos dons, nous allons pouvoir amener des soins médicaux, de la nourriture, un abri et des habits aux victimes de ce génocide. J'ai l'impression que quand on parle de ça, beaucoup de gens ne se rendent pas compte vraiment ce que l'autre est en train de vivre. Moi, on était une fois ici à Genève en train de sensibiliser ça, de dire donner 10 francs peut sauver la vie de quelqu'un. Donne-moi, je ne sais pas, une veste. Il y a quelqu'un qui dort dehors. Soyez pas égoïstes. Cherchez les infos. Maintenant, on a de la chance d'avoir ces réseaux sociaux, de se renseigner, de savoir la vérité. Rejoignez-nous. On peut faire quelque chose. On peut sauver la vie de quelqu'un là-bas. Voilà, c'est tout ce que j'ai à vous partager. Je suis là pour témoigner vraiment de ce que j'ai vécu. C'est pas drôle. Et j'ai pas envie que quelqu'un vive ça. Voilà.
Merci Laetitia. Thank you so much for everyone who watched on the YouTube or Zoom. So we have finished our intervention. If you have any question or if you would like to add something, you can maybe raise your hand in Zoom and they will let you in. Okay. Okay. As we took a really long time explaining all this because it was needed, nobody explained all this thing for the press, so it was very necessary for us to address the Amharan issue. So those of you who are going to participate, please make it clear, precise, and short. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we do. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I just had a couple of points and questions to ask. Obviously this kind of thing doesn't happen overnight, right? So it built up over 30 years of false narratives and genocidal talk. And what I want to say is a couple of things. One is, I hear people referring to the ethnic regions or ethnic federalism. I think it should be better categorized as really apartheid, or the regions should be referred to as Bantustans, because this is really what they are. And I think that kind of messaging is important because it doesn't help other people when you say ethnic federalism, when it truly is Bantustan type regions that are created by this ethnic this apartheid type constitution. My question is, why has the world ignored the plight of the Amhara people for such a long time? What are the geopolitics causing this type of ignorance or this type of not wanting to listen to what's happening? It reminds me of the Armenian Genocide over 100 years ago, and it wasn't recognized because of the geopolitics of the area. And the world powers were more allied to the Turkish government at the time, so they kind of ignored the Armenian Genocide. But then 100 years later or so, it was recognized. So what's the geopolitics in the Horn of Africa that's causing the Western powers to really ignore what's going on with Ethiopia, with the Amharas? Because it doesn't seem like, to me, it benefits the world for Ethiopia to disintegrate. I mean, we're going to create another Syria times 1,000 if Ethiopia disintegrates, a nation of 120 million. So why are the Western powers or the world powers allying themselves with liberation fronts who are extremists by nature, and not with the Amharas who really want the unification of Ethiopia and the stability of the region? I just don't understand that. So maybe Shalek Adawit can answer that because he understands the geopolitics of the area. But it just baffles me that the Western governments or the Western powers are always supporting liberation fronts or separatists who are secessionists and extremists by nature, just going to add fuel to the fire. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we take the other person also so that we can reply for both questions? Yes. Okay.
Can you hear me? Is it my turn?
Yes, it is. We are, yeah. Yes.
Thank you very much. I just want to ask Donald Boström, have you tried to inform the Swedish society about what you have seen in Ethiopia? And if not, why not? Why didn't you try? If you tried, why did you fail? You have got some true stories which you can help the Ethiopian people or the truth to be told to the world. Why didn't you try hard? Thank you.
Is Shalek Adawit around? Tobias. Shalek Dawit Weldegiorgis. Yeah, please, Shalek Adawit. There is also one question from the room. I will give the mic and then you can take over the stage.
Okay, thank you very much. I say hello to Shalek Adawit. This is Kifle. Nice to see you around. And well, the first question was asked really by the previous person. As a scholar, as a researcher on geopolitics, and as a diplomat, what is the interest of the Western democracy, the Western powers, to disintegrate Ethiopia, help disintegrate Ethiopia? That is my first question. The second one, as you are a trained soldier, a professional soldier also, how do you think the rebel groups with so little material and material in person and logistics, how come they entered up to the highlands of Amhara? This is really which is I don't understand. I couldn't understand. How do you say the advance of TPLF and up to the step door of Addis Ababa? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shalek Adawit, the stage is yours.
Yeah. It's a lot of questions here. I will try to answer them, but it might not be exactly an answer that somebody else would give, but it is more or less my own perspective. The first thing that we should realize when we talk about the West, Western powers, and particularly America, we should understand that American foreign policy and morality are different. If you read the book of Samantha Power's, the bestseller, some years ago, she wrote very clearly that America doesn't have any morality as far as foreign policy is concerned. Their foreign policy is not based on morality. The humanitarian response that they give is a result of the pressure from their constituency. And one of the policies, of course, to get influence and to get alliances. It's used as an instrument, and in some cases purely as a humanitarian, but both have their own rationale. But as far as the foreign policy is concerned, it is not based on foreign policy, on morality. It's not based on truth. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about the reality, what's going on. They care about their interest. And what is the interest of the United States? The interest of the United States is either economic supremacy, it's all economic supremacy, military supremacy, and strategically to be able to control the world. And they say it very clearly. I'm an American citizen. I know, I've studied in one of the best universities. Discussed with many kinds of people. So it is their declared intention. Look at Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the most backward, the most primitive, and one primary country with the largest human rights violation on record. On record. The practice is what is absolutely unimaginable. Moral violations, human rights violations. But yet, you see successive presidents going there and bowing to the emperors there, bowing to the emperors. So it's all about, again, strategic interest. It's all about economic interest. So let's not try the truth. The truth doesn't really matter. The perception of truth, or they can accept the truth so long as it serves their purpose. But the truth doesn't really matter. We say they don't know about Wolkai. They don't. Ethiopia is at least, it is not their concern. Their concern is not what is internally happening inside Ethiopia. Their concern is the implications of Ethiopia on their own interests, on regional stability. I don't believe, and sincerely, I don't believe that America wants, or the Western power want Ethiopia to disintegrate. Not because of moral values, not because it's not the right thing to do, but because it doesn't serve their best interest. If Ethiopia disintegrates, it is the whole of the region, the entire Horn of Africa, the entire Central Africa, and most probably the entire continent that will explode. And imagine, of the 110 million people in Ethiopia, if just 1 million people, forget even 1 million people, 500,000 people decide to migrate to the Mediterranean, look what kind of problem it can cause to the entire Mediterranean coastal countries. Like the Syrian refugee crisis was so humongous, so difficult for them to handle. They had to finance other countries to make them stop it. They had to finance Syria. They had to finance neighboring countries. They went to all the extent to be able to stop it. Imagine 1 million people going out of Ethiopia in terms of migration. Imagine the spillover. Sudan will not be safe. Djibouti will not be safe. The Red Sea will not be safe. And the Horn of Africa is the most militarized zone in the world, the complex military zone. It used to be Kashmir. Now it is the Horn of Africa. And they don't want the destabilization of the Horn of Africa. Not because they like Ethiopia, not because they like Djibouti, not because they like Sudan, but the disintegration will totally mean a challenge to the strategic interests in the Persian Gulf, in the Red Sea, and the Gulf of Aden. So I think it is just a misunderstanding of American interests. American interests, we expect them to be on the side of the truth. No, they are always on the side of the winners. If, I don't know what's going on inside Ethiopia at this moment, but if supposing TPLF wins and goes to Addis Ababa, I'm quite sure after some discussions, Americans will be one of the first to recognize the government. Why did they allow Wayani to move in Ethiopia, Herman Cohen? Because it was the only option that can ensure stability, a sense of stability, a semblance of stability. They knew that for 30 years, Ethiopia has been in turmoil. The genocide, the crimes against humanity, the erratic ethnic federalism, all this, they know about it. They talk about it. But so long as there is an entity called Ethiopia and does not directly affect their interests, it's okay. They had a drone base in Gore or Lubabor somewhere. They moved out, but if they wanted a base, Meles was ready to give them. They wanted him to intervene because America stopped intervening in African countries, sending foot soldiers in African countries after Somalia. They were very severely humiliated in Somalia, and they vowed after that to never send foot soldiers to any country in Africa. They send trainers, they send equipments, they send weapons. They probably, in a very indirect way, send perhaps soldiers, contracts, these military contractors nowadays, they are mercenaries which do the fighting on behalf of the government or on behalf of certain interest groups. But America will not directly intervene by sending foot soldiers. They will not do that. They have other ways of influencing situations. So the Red Sea, and Ethiopia is now very much tied with the Red Sea because the alliance between between the Ethiopian government and the Eritrean government is a threat to the Red Sea. So they have to somehow sort out the problem, and I'm quite sure they are trying to get a negotiated settlement. So I don't believe in the disintegration, that they support the disintegration. I don't believe at all that they do that. It is not to their best interest. They lose Sudan, they lose Egypt, then there will be proxy war like Yemen. Egypt will send troops, Sudan will send troops, Iran might, in Yemen, the battle in Yemen is not between Yemenis and Saudi Arabia. It's not. It is Saudi Arabia and Iran fighting in Yemen, using Yemenis people. And America supports that because it is whatever is anti-Iran, they will support. So they finance Saudi Arabia. They give all the materials and the military equipment to Saudi Arabia. So that kind of thing happening in Ethiopia will be extremely difficult. It's extremely complex. 100 million people, plus all the fragile states around us. Sudan is fragile. Darfur is fragile. South Sudan is fragile. Central African Republic, neighboring South Sudan, is very fragile. Uganda, just the other day, even in Uganda, extremists have infiltrated and they have trying to destabilize Uganda. Kenya has been a target of Al-Shabaab continuously, and they have taken some measures. There is American training team and some sort of, and there are 8-9 military bases in Djibouti. So we ask ourselves, why are so many military bases in Djibouti? They want to make sure that there is a sense of stability so that the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, and the path to the Indian Ocean is always clear and clean. And it is to the best interest of Israel, of course. Israel is the major player. So all these components, we have to put together all these components to understand the complexity of the foreign policy as far as the West is concerned. So that's one, I don't know whether I have answered the question, but that's one. Now, again, what I want to say is, I talked to some people close to the State Department, close to the decision makers, and ex-ambassadors. You know, their depth and knowledge about Ethiopia is very superficial. They don't understand Ethiopia the way you and I understand it. So that is one problem. And the other is the role of lobbyists. The largest lobbies in the United States are three: the Israeli lobby, the Saudi Arabia lobby, and the National Rifle Association lobby in the local. These are the kingmakers. These are the people who elect congressmen, who elect senators, who elect presidents. Without support, nothing can happen. So they know. We made a calculation I wrote somewhere. 43% of congressmen and senators, when they retire, they become they become lobbyists, and most of the times it is one of the three organizations I mentioned. So while during their tenure as senators and congressmen, they have to serve their purpose to be able to get a job when they retire. The country is, the foreign policy is determined by lobbyists, how hard you lobby. The Israeli lobby is a huge, the greatest, the largest, the most powerful. And so is the Saudi Arabia lobby. So that is a weakness in some parts, our own weakness. Why did the Tigray's news is more spread out than our true case, our case, which is based on the truth, because the lobbying. So that I have written about that. One guy, one friend, Abiyu, I think he mentioned about Bantustanization. Yeah, I have read my article, The Bantustanization of Ethiopia. Google it and you'll find out how similar it is, how Bantustanization and the Ethiopian situation is similarity. It's exactly what you said. We call it apartheid, we call it Bantustanization, moving backward instead of forward. So we are going back into the junkyard of history, picking what history has rejected, what history has condemned as garbage. We are picking it up. And we are creating a society that is that did not even exist in the 3,000 years of our history. So it's backwardness. And eventually what you said about the soldier, being a soldier, they call me major. You know, those people, those of you who live in the US or in Europe, you serve in the army and then you go out. Once you go out, you are a mister. That rank doesn't stick with you. For me, somehow it has stuck with me and people call me major. There are so many generals, colonels, captains who are not called captains or majors. For me, by some instance, because I left the army in 1968, 67, 68, long before some of you were born. And since then, I have been called major. I became a major while I was a student. I went from the military to the university, and I was captain. I was promoted to major when I was in school, and then people like calling me major. Okay, I like it. I love it because the military really molded me. That's what you see, Dawit. You see that Dawit that you see is the person that has been molded by that military tradition, the strongest tradition in military tradition in Africa, a tradition that has helped liberate many African countries. Soldiers, officers who have been to where no senior officers have been, not current ones. Any senior officers, even in the US and in America, have not been. We were there in many places. We made a change in world history. We made a difference in world history. So those were my instructors and my bosses, and I was molded by their character. Yes. So I can't understand what, I don't call them soldiers. I don't care. I don't call Abiy a soldier. He's not a soldier. Ask how they became a soldier. He was a corporal. He was 15 years old. And then suddenly he became a captain. One guy became a captain. And then suddenly he became a colonel. He has never been to any military institution at all. Probably when he was 15, 16 in the jungle. But me, to earn the rank of a second lieutenant, I had to go to 3 years military academies, the best military academy in the world, in Africa, with many generals, Nigerians, Ugandans, Kenyans, South African guerrilla fighters, when they came to learn. It was one of the best military academies in Africa, the best in Africa. So I came out from that. It took me 3 years to be a cadet. And then to be a second lieutenant, it took me another 3 years. To be a captain, it took me another 3 years. And some of us did not, some of my friends did not make it because that through the 3 years, you are monitored, your service, your character, your whatever integrity is all examined. And then you are given, it's not given, not necessarily after 6 years you'll be a captain. It's not, it may not even happen. But I became, so I grew up in the best tradition, military tradition of Ethiopia. And I don't understand the current soldiers. I don't understand how this guy thinks. The major generals, if you see the major generals of Ethiopia, these are people who command, you know, I talk a lot. You know?
Yeah,
you know?
You have to conclude because we have another person online.
You know, the first, after the Second World War, the only peacekeeping force, the first peacekeeping force that was sent to the Africa or anywhere in the world was headed by an Ethiopian general, General Kabare Gabre. The only one. It could have been an American, it could have been a European, but it was General Kabare Gabre. And he proved it. He served 2 years.
Yeah,
and
we
then,
have, thank you, Major.
So I cannot explain what this, sorry, I don't answer because I don't call them soldiers. These are guerrilla fighters. So I don't think they get into that greater picture of military tradition.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Sorry?
Yeah,
sorry.
We call you Major because you are always in action and you are always trying to do something. So I don't know, it's also your character, I think, because I had a hard time also to call you Mr. So yeah, that's understandable. So we have Dr. Debru, I think, who raised the hand. So please, Dr. Debru, also, if you can, I don't know if you have a question or if you have a comment, if you make it brief, because after you, I think we are going to finish this press conference. Thank you.
Thank you. I raised my hand earlier than anyone else. So allow me to speak my mind as well. Thank you for the wonderful presentation, Shalaka Dawit. I had always wanted to be a soldier myself, but never a chance to be one. I think all the speakers are commendable indeed. Having left home 45 years ago and spent many moons in this part of the world, allow me to say a few things as well on quite a number of areas. Primarily, the so-called international community, in my mind, is complicit. As you probably know, Addis Ababa is the third diplomatic capital of the world. So it could not have been unbeknown to anyone what's happening in Ethiopia over the last 30 years. So it is a willful ignorance, to say the least. I'll probably come to that point a little later. Let me comment on a few things that Shalaka Dawit and the other speakers had said. The Amharas are being exterminated not because they are numerically superior, as Mesfen mentioned. It is the Amharas in the so-called Oromo region are officially disarmed. They are made defenseless. It is not only that the Oromo villains are armored to the hilt, as you rightly pointed out, but the Amharas are decidedly disarmed. So it is a complete extermination. That's one point I wanted to clarify, I think. The other thing Mesfen mentioned, I think, is it is not the numerical superiority of the Amharas that makes them vulnerable at all. That is not the reason. The people, the Tigray Liberation Front, historically, for about 7 generations, Tigrays had allied with invaders, whether it was the British, the Italians twice, the Somalis, and the Eritrean separatists. For 150 years, the preponderant majority of Tigrays had been allying with invaders. We can't actually escape that. So it is this nascent nationalism that made them do what they did. And Mr. Bostrom quite rightly pointed out a few things which are quite interesting. I want to raise one point. The expansion of Tigrays, the aggression of Tigrays into Debre Tabor had nothing to do with their intention of expanding the region. They never claimed that. They had no connection to any of the places. That it is a sheer aggression, a war of extermination. They stipulated when they annexed Ethiopia, with the support of many, many Western nations, by the way, the United States included, allowed them to do what they did. And for 30 years, I lost 52 family members of mine 29 years ago. They were massacred in the thick of the night without any provocation, simply because they were Amharas in Harar. And many more have been killed since. My parents escaped with a whisker to Addis Ababa, and my father died in grief a few years ago. So it is a willful decision on the part of someone. I think Ahmed asked why it is that the West is, the international community is silent about the Ethiopian genocide. I don't think it is indifference. I don't think, as well as Shalak Adait mentioned, America's so-called interest. Historically, Ethiopia had deflated the invisibility of European imperialism, and we had to pay heavily for that. Africa's independence rested primarily on the shoulders of Ethiopians. The non-aligned movement, which was established some 40, 50 years ago by our emperor, Tito, and Nehru, was to counter the excesses of the West. They hated Ethiopia for that as well. So that is primarily the reason why, when Ethiopia was invaded 80 years ago, 85 years ago, America and the West were absolutely complicit in Ethiopia's destruction. They sanctioned both Ethiopia and Italia, which was a major producer of firearms, not to avail firearms from someone else. Italy was the fourth largest producer of weapons by then. Ethiopia was not allowed to import guns. So this is intentional. I happened to live in Zimbabwe when Mugabe appropriated the land, rightly or wrongly. The entire Western nations clamored about that. So it couldn't have been interest alone. So it is much more than that. So finally, I think what the international community can do, we do not want anybody's assistance, at least the mere recognition that the Amhara population has got to be decimated. Let the world know about it. I think we'll turn things around ourselves. We don't need the international community, but let at least that recognition be allowed to happen. And Mr. Bostrom, I say something, it is the Scandinavians who accorded a Nobel Prize on that villain. I call him a villain, who hasn't even seen the four walls of a school, let alone to deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. This man has been, for 27 years, he has been forefront in the annexation of Amhara lands, in the extermination of Amharas. He was a security agent. He is responsible for building a statue in a place called Anole, where amputated breasts, a narrative had been created that Amharas were responsible. It is historically, it is absolutely un-Amhara. It is not in the DNA of Amharas to even knife someone, let alone to slaughter. It is absolutely obnoxious in our culture. Oromos, his ancestors have been doing that. This is the man they gave a Nobel Prize. Mr. Bostrom, I plead with you at least to revoke the unduly conferred upon Nobel Prize to a villain who, in the course of a few years, would probably meet the fate of Mussolini, whom his own people actually hanged upside down. I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dabru. By the way, Dr. Dabru, for the people who do not know him, in the Amhara genocide, he has lost around 58 family members were killed. So, yeah. So he knows what this genocide is all about. Thank you so much for your intervention. So we have finished our presentation for today. I hope international journalists, Swiss journalists, would come to us to stop Amhara genocide, which is based in Canton de Vaud, Chavornay, and we can give you whatever you need. We have videos of people mutilating with knife, crying out. We have pictures of kids cut in pieces. We have testimonies of people, who escaped, people who were raped, women who were raped, children who saw their parents slaughtered before their eyes. We have all of it. So the only thing that we would like to ask the Swiss population, the journalists, international communities, is please don't ignore this. Because if you have a conscious, this is something which is happening, there is all the proof necessary, we can give it to you. Please contact us, report this, help us to stop this genocide. Thank you.